Now, before we move on, I just wanted it to be known that again, this is a lot of his writings here. And look, he even took a Nova's symbol that he came up with for the Noon Project and created something called the Noon Society Presents the Noon Project, right? The official seal of the Noon something. I think the Noon Project. Intergalactic Blueprint Orientation Document, full disclosure. Okay? Now, the next person that I wanted to speak on was a brother known by Cheyenne the Liberator. And Cheyenne, according to what Anova was telling me, Anova had some stuff called the solution, and it was broken up into all types of information that he drafted to what he thought the Noon Society would run. It was a whole bunch of writings, and I remember reading this in 2008 when I came to New York, and then I seen them later on. I had it somewhere, but I have to locate it. And but anyway, this is the site that it was on, right? This is an old site, but here it was broken up, right? And according to this, it's broken up in chapter 1, last days, chapter 2, correcting your identity and status, corporate immunity, unplugging from the matrix, standing on your square, creating ecclesiastical governments, creating sustainable communities, 2010 release. Now, when I got with Anova and them in 2012, Anova told me that he wrote those books and he shared it with Cheyenne, and Cheyenne ended up taking it and putting it out and was getting credit for it. Why Anova never came out and said something about it, who knows, right? And that's if he's even telling the truth on that. But that's what he told me. So now, Cheyenne is a very interesting case because again, we're going to show you he followed the same thing that the others was doing. Now he came before Larry. He was doing this thing before I came around. But the point is, I'm going to show you how they took Noon and started doing all these wacky things with it, and it made no sense. So let's dig into that for a second. Hold on for a minute.
I just want to get into briefly just a few things concerning the steps I'm going to have to take in order to start implementing a lot of these solutions. Again, holistically, the issue would be to change your environment. I know that sounds kind of corny, but that's really what you have to do. And you have to actually start to build new structures, new architecture, things that are cleaner and healthier, because it's better for you mentally, spiritually, and physically. So just in conjunction with how it's easily implemented, the United Nations, with that declaration, also found a way to have a joint venture with something called the Marrakesh process. The Marrakech process. This is a 10-year frame or plan that is basically something that a lot of countries signed on to. It's right there, the Marrakech process, global process to support the elaboration of a 10-year framework of programs on sustainable consumption and production as for by the WSSD Johannesburg Plan of Action. Goals to assist countries in their efforts to go green. To assist countries in their efforts to green their economies, to help corporations develop greener business models, to encourage consumers to adopt more sustainable lifestyles.
All right, now, for those who been following us for a long time, we've been telling y'all about the United Nations, and one of the words, two things that he said, which were buzzwords, was going green and sustainable. All right, now this was filmed in 2009. Once again, this ain't got nothing to do with Noon Science, but yet the word noon is right there. It's right underneath the video. So you have to ask yourself, how did this stuff get here? It got here because those dirty spirits got all of y'all writing things and putting it out there, and then it's running with it, and y'all throwing noon in there because the spirits are trying to discredit and confuse and distort the information, because the 9-ball, all of that stuff doesn't say. It tells you to separate. It tells you to be a perfect racist and to separate and do for self and kind. None of this stuff is going to occur because these people is falling into what the United Nations talk about. Let me show y'all what I'm talking about. Give me 1 second. Watch this. Before we jump back into what I wanted to present, I'm just going to replay again so you can understand what is taking place here. So here you can see it said Earth Ships 101, right? Now watch what he says. He's going to mention stuff dealing with the Earth, climate change, and a 10-year process, okay? To help, and other countries signed on to this. What he's talking about is at Rio de Janeiro, 170 countries signed on to create what's called Agenda 21, and from that, they brought into like 2015, they brought in what's called Sustainable Development Goals, which were supposed to break down into the government, the federal level, the state level, and lower levels than that, all the way through your local communities, all being controlled. Agenda 21 is the political name for the New World Order.
The United Nations, with that declaration, also found a way to have a joint venture with something called the Marrakesh Process.
Now notice, you see the word sustainable is right here, and it's a global framework. So this right here is making Cheyenne look real suspect coming from our side of things, because we did the research and found out that this is very serious and important and dangerous. But let's listen.
Catch process. This is a 10-year frame or plan.
Now he said this is a 10-year frame or plan. Remember that, 10 years.
That is basically something that a lot of countries signed on to.
All right. Again, I told you that was happening in 1992. 170 something countries signed on. Basically, that was the New World Order coming together, and those countries met in Geneva. All right, so they met for a couple of days, from I think the 3rd to the 14th in June, I think, and they locked out all of the indigenous people that was there, and only they people met. Okay, I talked about this more than once. All right, let me just show you for the listening and reading audience. Remember, this happened. This is the Earth Summit. All right, this is what is being spoken about. That Cheyenne is lightly speaking of.
As our home.
I'm just saying you need to take care of the simple things, because if you can't do the simple things, how are you going to save the environment?
At the moment, it's the men who dominate the decision making.
Earth Summit has locked out the fourth world people.
June 1992, the world met in Rio to discuss the fate of planet Earth. In this largest summit and very first Earth summit ever held, representatives from 166 countries,
Now listen, this is about climate change. That's what this whole thing is about. The Illuminati came together and still was trying to do this whole climate change ever since the late 60s, right? That's when you get into the Club of Rome and all this stuff and how they was looking at the resource of the planet back then and they projected it a couple of decades ahead. So all this is dealing with climate change, just so y'all can understand that.
Heads of state and 15,000 non-governmental organizations came together with the hopes of deciding specific agreements that would balance environmental preservation with economic needs. Everyone wonders what happened at Rio. Why did we hear so little about it? With 9,000 journalists, the largest gathering of international press the world has ever seen in one place, it is a wonder why more information was not disseminated. One reason was obvious. The majority of press stayed inside the fortress-like walls of UNCED, the UN Conference on Environment and Development, and roamed around looking for tidbits of news. When a story seemed to be brewing, the hungry crowd of journalists grew frantic, like a pack of piranhas in a feeding frenzy.
So this is just a basic understanding of what was going on, but I'm going to go into it a little deeper. So let's go into this video, which I did 2019, late 2019, somewhere up in there. Now let's listen to what was being spoken about here. Let's watch and listen.
And what are we doing instead? At Copenhagen, this December, weeks away, a treaty will be signed. Your president will sign it. Most of the third world countries will sign it because they think they're going to get money out of it. Most of the left-wing regimes around the world, like the European Union, will rubber stamp it. Virtually nobody won't sign it. I have read that treaty, and what it says is this: that a world government is going to be created. The word government actually appears as the first of three purposes of the new entity. The second purpose is the transfer of wealth from the countries of the West to third world countries in satisfaction of what is called coyly a climate debt. Because we've been burning CO2 and they haven't, and we've been screwing up the climate. We haven't been screwing up the climate, but that's the lie. And the third purpose of this new entity, this government, is enforcement. How many of you think that the word election or democracy or vote or ballot occurs anywhere in the 200 pages of that treaty? Quite right, it doesn't appear once. So at last, the communists who piled out of the Berlin Wall and into the environmental movement and took over Greenpeace, so that my friends who founded it left within a year because they'd captured it. Now the apotheosis is at hand. They are about to impose a communist world government on the world. You have a president who has very strong sympathies with that point of view. He's going to sign. He'll sign anything. He's a Nobel Peace Laureate. Of course he'll sign it. And the trouble is this: if that treaty is signed, your constitution says that it takes precedence over your constitution. And you can't resile from that treaty unless you get the agreement of all the other states parties. And because you'll be the biggest paying country, they're not going to let you out. So, thank you, America. You were the beacon of freedom to the world. It is a privilege merely to stand on this soil of freedom while it is still free. But in the next few weeks, unless you stop it, your president will sign your freedom, your democracy, and your prosperity away forever. And neither you nor any subsequent government you may elect will have any power whatsoever to take it back again. That is how serious it is. I have read the treaty. I've seen this stuff about government and climate debt and enforcement. They are going to do this to you, whether you like it or no.
Now he said the UN predicts disaster if global warming not checked. This is a hoax. But this is what Shyam is doing, and he's got it named as the Noon Project. He's taking Newport Noon in the books into this whole foolishness, which is the same mind state that Anovanim was doing. So understand that this whole thing with the United Nations makes no sense, because anybody that have any knowledge should have knew that the United Nations is the last place you want to align yourself with, because they are pushing all this crap.
I want to thank the Secretary General for organizing the summit and all the leaders who are participating. But so many of us are here today is a recognition that the threat from climate change is serious, it is urgent, and it is growing. Our generation's response to this challenge will be judged by history. For if we fail to meet it boldly, swiftly, and together, we risk consigning future generations to an irreversible catastrophe. No nation, however large or small, wealthy or poor, can escape the impact of climate change. Rising sea levels threaten every coastline. Or powerful storms and floods threaten every continent.
Again, none of this stuff was taking place like they were saying. They're pushing fear, okay? And this is the same person that Anova sent his documents into years after Cheyenne was already working with the United Nations with this foolishness, okay? So now, if you go into what we was telling y'all, me and Queeper was telling y'all over 2 years ago, and Anoop was telling y'all about this whole Agenda 21, y'all to be in a better shape. Now let's get to the next video I did dealing with this.
This was instrumental in this document, which is called Agenda 21, the Earth Summit Strategy to Save Our Planet. And it required all executive federal agencies, constitutional or not agencies, to implement for the next 10 years, so from 1993 to the year 2003.
All right, remember, 10 years, even though it was 2009 when Cheyenne was talking, all of this is plans within plans within plans, because really it was a 30-year plan, 1992 to 2022. Then they had another one that they was trying to do 2030, and then a 2045, and for Africa 2060 something, 2065 for Africa, because it's a bigger continent. So all this dealing with depopulation, all that other stuff is all wrapped up in this. And mind you, this person is supposed to be the face of the Noon Project, because he allegedly took those books from Anova and took credit for that.
Agenda 21 policies in every aspect of the federal government.
Copy, peace, and war terms. All right, this here is the document that details when Bill Clinton created, which is the President's Council on Sustainable Development, July 20th, 1993. And it just talks about its designation, the President Council on Sustainable Development. The council was established by Executive Order 12852. You add them up, 8 plus 5 plus 2 is 15. Plus 2, 16, 17, plus 1 is 18, 666. And, that's how they do things, break down to 3s and 6s. And when you're dealing with these people and the type of numbers that they like to use, got to be real on it to see that. The council shall advise the president on matters involving sustainable development and further the mission. All right, the council will develop and recommend to the president
a national sustainable development action strategy that will foster economic vitality, advise the president on fashioning an annual presidential award recognizing exemplary efforts toward the achievement of sustainable development ideas, and submit nominations for the award to the president. So this just basically saying they're gonna have incentives for people who really make way on it. Right, the duties of the council solely to advise in nature, which we know that's still, that doesn't mean nothing, because to advise something that's already been passed into law, that means they're there to make sure that president or whoever is following suit.
So again, they saying they had incentives. That's what they set up. So looking at what Cheyenne was doing, the Marrakesh Society or whatever was working with the United Nations to implement what they call going green. So that means he took money. That's what that means. For y'all who did not pay attention to what Agenda 21 was about, y'all really late in the game. But y'all should really look into Agenda 21 and Sustainable Development Goals exposed. So now what we're finna do is take a look at the face of the man of the Noon Project. All right, let's do that real quick.
They had that on the History Channel on how you make money, how they make money. And when they keep showing you the bailout, they just keep showing you them print money. They're printing it just like there's a printer here. They print money. So if that's what's valuable to you, and you give full faith and credit in that, and that's in God you trust, that's your first problem right there. Because one of the things that could be done is that these local places could be creating local currencies. That's something else that the Noon Project is working to implement.
See, once again, nothing in Noon science supports this type of thing. This is what we talking about. Spirit beings was already at play working to create more confusion amongst us. Cheyenne was nowhere into following Noon science in the least. But look at the bottom of it. See, all of this extended from ANOVA following behind York and mixing all of this stuff because he really wasn't listening to Noon. And he mixed in all of this sovereignty stuff, this Moore's paperwork, all of this crap. We're going to listen a little bit more, then we're going to move on.
The Ithaca Hours, they have an international currency. They exist on 175 acres of property, and they have their own international currency. So the whole thing is that people have to change. They can't be like the neighbors they are now. They have to be more communal. You have to have a holistic change of thought in order to actually implement success and survival after this whole fiasco that's going on. Because what's going to happen is more people going to keep losing their jobs. There's no solution for that. And when the bailout and the stimulus package is passed, all that's doing is inflating the money quickly. Right, that's right.
So he just said these other places had their own currency, and this is what ANOVA was trying to do. He was buying into this thing when the Noon Science, the books say go to Africa when it's practical for a group of people to do. You got some people who already done took that trip and they doing their thing. A lot of us wasn't woke at this point understanding these things. So based upon what ANOVA was trying to do, he was trying to follow the roadmap that dealt with being here and thinking he was going to come up with some type of document that was going to get him this great payoff. But according to him, the Noon Project, which was a bunch of writings about how the Noon Society is supposed to run, he shared that with Cheyenne, and Cheyenne ran with it, according to ANOVA. Like I said, I don't know if it's true or it could have been the other way around. I don't know. Okay? But I do know that's what I was told. All right, so let's look into a little bit more. Again, this is the face of what they calling the Noon Project, right? Now watch this. Here is Cheyenne in court. And this is February 17, 2010. Now, if I'm correct, Cheyenne was in court because I think he got caught traveling with cocaine in his car. And I think it was for personal use or something like that. But they had some kind of terminology that they was using that claimed that the cops had no jurisdiction for whatever the case was. But again, the point comes down to this. He's a representative, right, of Noon Project. Not Noon Science, but they're spelling it with N. He's spelling it with Noone to separate it being N-U-N, how Nova was doing it. All right, so why she say his name, Shyam, so y'all know this is the same brother we was looking at in the other clip.
That's right.
So you're
What
threatening me?
about the 26th? Are you available then?
Are you threatening me now?
Of course I'm not threatening you.
So,
Mr.
force me to come.
Cheyenne Matuda Cushing.
All right, she said Cheyenne Matula. Let me go back because he got a long name.
You.
So,
Mr.
force me to come.
Cheyenne Matuda Cushing.
Cheyenne Matula Kush, I think more L. So this is Cheyenne in the courtroom about this I think this cocaine case. If I'm wrong, somebody please correct me, but I just want y'all to know this is the same one.
You should be clear in your mind that I am issuing no threats to you. As I said before, you've been exceedingly polite and courteous. I think I've been polite and courteous, despite the goading that goes on. However, these are the dates that I have. Monday, January 5th, Monday, January 12th, Tuesday, the 20th, and Monday, the 26th. Any of those days better than another for you?
I'm not subject to the court's jurisdiction, so I will not be able to physically attend any of the court hearings.
Well, appear metaphysically then. Monday, January 26th at 9 o'clock in the morning.
I cannot make that date, man.
Oh, you know what? I can't either. We'll put it back for the 20th.
Under threat, duress, and coercion, I
No,
choose
sir,
Tuesday.
not. You want Tuesday the 20th?
Under threat, duress, and coercion.
Tuesday the 20th at 9 a.m. If you're not able to be here physically, you'll be here metaphysically. What we will decide on that day is we will do the briefing schedule so that we can decide the issue of jurisdiction.
Okay, can you clarify? What do you mean metaphysically?
I don't know. What do you mean you can't be here physically?
I can't be here physically in this room. That's what I mean.
Okay.
But he's there physically in the room right now, though.
No, I cannot, and I will not. On that day, we will set the briefing schedule so that the issue of does this court have jurisdiction can be heard and determined.
Okay, now he's going back and forth with the judge about jurisdiction and all that. Now watch this clip, the next clip. Hold on.
Is whether the Moorish American Aboriginal Indigenous Sovereign Man with the attribute Cheyenne Matuta Kushimir L can continue his involvement in this litigation without a lawyer. I have used the words pro se. He objects to that. It is my understanding that he wants it to be impropria persona sui juris. In the state of New Jersey, we have started to talk about self-represented litigants. However you call it, the issue is the same, and that is whether this person can continue in this litigation with or without an attorney. The indictment as to Cheyenne Matuta Kushimir L charges three things. In count one, it charges possession of a controlled dangerous substance, to wit cocaine, out of an incident that arose in Mount Laurel on October 24th, 2007. It further charges in count two, third-degree false documents, and alleges that it alleges in the indictment a fraudulent U.S. Department of State public minister credential in the name of Chief Minister Cheyenne M. Kushimir L as a means of verifying a person's identity.
All right, so now that was just showing you that he was in court for cocaine possession, some false documents, and some type of other type of identification. This is what a lot of Moors go through all the time. But again, the point is, this person was running around with different types of organizations and wearing all these different hats like York and getting into trouble, going into court and dragging Noon along with them. And the nature books clearly tells you not to use drugs. Same thing we told Charles, junkie. And they're still running around here with our symbols on their YouTubes, their Facebooks, and they're breaking the laws of nature as well as the laws of the land. All this other stuff that they're talking about, again, nature deals with reality. The reality is the Caucasian is still in power, and this is his government, and they work it the way they work it. That's reality and reason. Now, if they want to go through all that, that's on them. But I just wanted to establish that all of these people who, and even Cheyenne was influenced by Dr. York at some point. And again, all this was going on in 2007. All this stuff just going and going and going and disrespecting the writers of the nature of nature. And like I said, I seen this years ago. It's like 11 years ago. Cocaine possession. Then again, Cheyenne is not into Noon. That was just something he was using to add on to his credentials of being more intelligent than he really was. My good friend Lord Abba can attest to that. He worked with him personally. I used to talk to him a lot. I told at a function he had one time. I knew him as far as we met face to face. We used to kick it and all that. Abba got a whole story he could tell you about this particular person. But this whole point is on a greater level is to show you that we have no time to be playing these games. And again, once again, it shows you that birds of a feather flock together. And so Nova and all of them people were filthy. Spiritually speaking, they was committing immoral crimes when it came to the information and what was sent here by way of Nupu and Noon through Afro-Unim to write, investigate, and circulate correct information. And all they did was create small mini cult groups. So I just wanted that to be known on the record. I see y'all on the next go round. True men to call the peace in wartime.